Hey guys, I'm Angela and it is Halloween season. So this week, I wanted to put together a special episode focusing on spooky board games that you can play this season either with friends or family. And I have really considered hard and long about this list because I actually am a huge fan of horror games. I play a lot of horror games. You've probably seen me mention a lot of them in some of my other board game lists. So some of the things that I tried to focus on was nostalgia, what I like thematically for them, and also color, because I actually wanted to try to highlight some games that were a little bit more bright and colorful because that really fits my personality. And there's a couple games on this list that hit such a nostalgic button for some of the classic 90s and early aughts like Halloween theming that it just really took off in that direction. So without further ado, let's get to some honorable mentions and then the main list. Now, before we get into the main list, I wanted to go ahead and honorably mention basically all of the Call of Cthulhu, well, not Call of Cthulhu, all of the Cthulhu, Arkham Horror, and Eldritch Horror games that Fantasy Flight makes. Because if you like the Elder Gods and you want to play some games that involve Call of Cthulhu, my goodness, does Fantasy Flight have you covered. They not only have the classic Arkham Horror board game, as well as the Eldritch Horror board game if you're wanting something long, intense, and terrifying, but they also have stuff like Mansions of Madness, which is one of my personal favorites, but I've talked about it before, which is why I didn't specifically want to put it on this list. You can also, if you're wanting something a little bit on the lower cost side, because Mansions is a little bit pricey, you could also go for one of my favorites, the Arkham Horror Living card game, which is right here and quite awesome. It plays 1 to 2 players. It's not super expensive. I believe it's only like 40 bucks. And I really think that it is a great horror game that you can play. It's tense. You have varying difficulties that you can play it at, but really Fantasy Flight has plenty of Cthulhu themed games if that is your jam. Now, let's go ahead and get into the main list and talk about some other spooky games. Night has fallen, and a necromancer marches his army forwards towards a stronghold. Within that stronghold, an artifact that can restore the necromancer back to his full power. But will he make it in time, or will the fortress's defenses hold and keep him out so that his army and he turn to dust when dawn rises? That is the scenario you will be getting yourself into with Stronghold Undead. This is a wonderful 2-player tower defense game with asymmetric components in it that I absolutely love. Both players are doing various things. You've got the necromancer on one side who's trying to get an artifact of power out of the stronghold, and then you've got the other opponent, which is what I've played, which is the defender. Now, I am a huge fan of tower defense games, and that is what this game is all about. And as the defender, which is what I played, I super loved it. It was incredibly tense when I was playing it because I really got the feeling of kind of being overwhelmed by the undead at one point. The layers that you had to end up building up as defenses in order to keep the necromancer out was thrilling. It was constantly tactile and engaging, and I absolutely love all the components and the board in this game. They were fun to play with. I felt constantly engaged, and the color palette is super awesome. I actually was very much drawn to the box when I first saw it because I personally love the sort of classic monster poster theming, and the yellow and green color palette really speaks to that to me. If you ever saw the classic Betrayal on House of the Hill box, it really gave me that vibe. And then when I saw that it was a tower defense, which was one of the first games I ever played for board games, I was like, man, this is totally my jam, and it absolutely was. Now, it does take up a little bit of space, so if you don't have a big play area, this may not be the best game for you, but if you do have the space and you have the time to dedicate to this, and you have somebody to play against, I would absolutely recommend this game, especially if you've been enjoying playing things like They Are Billions, because you get that heart-racing thrill of trying to defend your tower against an onslaught of like just tons and tons of undead creatures, and it's just so cool, and I really love this game, so I'd really recommend you check it out as well. I'm going to pluck you out of the stronghold now and plop you down into a bit of more cozy environment. because I want to talk about a little bit of a less spooky game, but still very much a Halloween themed game, and that is Patchwork Halloween Edition. Now, Patchwork, the classic edition, has been out for a very long time, and Uwe Rosenberg is a designer of many games in the industry. But he does make a lot of games that I really like because I'm a huge fan of spatial puzzle games, and Patchwork is all about spatial puzzles. In this game, you and one other person will be competing to create the most charming, unique, and high-scoring quilt of your choice. And you'll be doing that by collecting and paying for these adorable pieces with all of these adorable eye tokens, because this is your coins, and you'll be doing that, filling out your 9x9 grid and building a gorgeous quilt. Now, the thing that I like about this game and why I put it on this list is because it's an actual Halloween themed game, and while normally I'm not a huge fan of when board games do that, it actually works incredibly well for Patchwork because of the nature of the game. You are making a quilt, and all of these adorable Halloween prints and color palettes work so well on these pieces. It creates a delightfully colorful game, and it just, honestly, when I saw this up for pre-order, I looked at it and went, wow, I am getting such a strong nostalgia for the 90s and early 2000s Disney Channel and Nickelodeon Halloween specials on television, and it just brought me back to that so strongly that I had to pick this game up. I mean, I already like Patchwork a ton, but thematically, this one just fits so well. I love the colors. I love all of the various patterns. Like, there's some like cute stripes with spiders on them. There's some witch hats. There's this one in particular, this purple piece with all of these purple pumpkins with the orange glowing eyes. It's so adorable. I just love it so much. And because this is a nice little cozy game that you can play 2-player, it is a great thing to bring to a family get-together where you're maybe wanting to reconnect with a particular person, maybe still have a conversation with that person as you're playing, but also still having a lovely time playing with all these tactile pieces, bright and colorful, and playing this game. So if that's something that interests you, I would definitely recommend checking out Patchwork Halloween Edition. Hello, Imperial Citizen. This is your regular reminder to subscribe to the channel and hit the Emperor's bell for notifications. And if you're feeling particularly devout, you can join my Patreon, where you'll get exclusive unboxings, behind-the-scenes content, and more. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the video. Now we're gonna dive straight back into some zombie-themed games because I want to talk today about Zombicide Black Plague, which is my favorite of all of the Zombicide games. Now, if you are a Kickstarter backer, you're probably familiar with the Zombicide franchise, as it has been around since I think 2012, and they have a variety of options that you can choose from. But what are you actually doing in this game? Well, you are cooperatively working together to save the village over progressively increasing missions to basically stop this zombie apocalypse that has been brought down upon you by some more necromantic overlords. Although it would be cool if you added Necrons in it. Honestly, you probably could if you were playing the Invader version. But for the Black Plague version, it's all fantasy themed, which is my jam when it comes to zombies. Now, there are, like I said, a lot of different variations of the Zombicide franchise you can get if you are a big zombie lover. And I know that for Halloween, that is a huge thematic appeal. And so there is the standard edition for Zombicide, which has both the first edition as well as a very recent second edition. There is the Black Plague version, which, like I said, is my favorite. There is the Green Horde edition, which is a sort of sequel to the Black Plague, and it adds in a bunch of undead orcs. So if you're a big orc fan or that kind of thing, I would definitely recommend that one because there's a lot of really cool miniatures in it. Plus, as I mentioned, there is also the Invader version, which is more of a sci-fi kind of alien space adventure, which I really like. And then additionally, if you are a fan of Romero's Night of the Living Dead, you can even get a version of Zombicide set in that franchise. Now, one of the main reasons I put this game on my list is, one, it's probably one of the games I've played the most on this list, and I just love it for all of the components. I am a huge proponent of using miniatures from various games in a bunch of different games, and Zombicide has such an opportunity for that because there are tons of different zombie models. You can use zombies in really any RPG game that you might be playing, which is how I've used them the most. Like, I use this particular set all the time when I'm playing D&D. It fits perfectly for like a Curse of Strahd campaign. So I definitely recommend, if you're wanting a good way to get a lot of really nice quality miniatures for actually pretty inexpensive if you really think about it, because you basically get, I think there's 71 miniatures in this set. It costs about $109, and I think that's like $150 a piece or something like that. My math might be slightly wrong there. But it's a pretty good deal on these miniatures, so it's definitely something worth picking up this Halloween season. The next game on my list is Horrified from Ravensburger, a 1 to 5 player cooperative game that is perfect for any family get-together. In this game, you are going to be taking on the roles of various villagers that live in this town that has been plagued by classic movie monsters, each of which will have a unique way it needs to be defeated. Each character that you'll be playing also has unique abilities to aid them in their quest to find ways to actually get rid of these monsters from their town. Now, one of the main reasons that I actually love this game is because it features all of the classic movie monsters. I'm a huge horror fan, and in this you can find Frankenstein, Frankenstein's bride, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, the creature from the Black Lagoon, and then of course my two favorites, the Mummy, because I'm a huge fan of the Brendan Fraser film The Mummy. I absolutely adore it, and while this is the classic version of him, I don't care. In my head, it's still Emotep. And then of course there's also Dracula. If you've been a fan of this channel, if you know me at all, you know that I absolutely adore vampires, and I love seeing that Dracula is represented here, and I look forward to being able to defeat him in this game with my friends. Now, in addition to it just having these monsters, you do actually get some really cool miniatures that represent the monsters, and they totally fit the classic movie vibe, which I absolutely adore. But you also get a lot of really great standees that have some great components. The colors are vivid and beautiful. They pop out of their cardboard super easily. And really, honestly, this entire game is super well put together, which you can very much expect from Ravensburger, because that's sort of one of the things that they're known for. At least I've had that experience with them. I really like their Villainous game for Disney, and that also has fantastic components. It's also just super bright and vivid, and while that may not be for everybody this Halloween season, I am a huge fan of bold pops of color, and this game really speaks to that. Now, there is something that I do want to call out about this game that is an upcoming version of it that is going to feature the American monsters, all of the cryptids, your classic favorites, things like the Mothman, Chupacabra, Bigfoot. I think there's a Yeti in there as well, and I think two others, and I can't quite remember off the top of my head what they are, but the game isn't quite out yet, but I'm really looking forward to that one as well, because I'm a huge fan of Fallout, and they like to use the cryptids in that as well, and I'm really excited to see the versions of the miniatures that they have for this, because like I said, I really like the ones that you get in this game, and I look forward to seeing the more creatures from the other version of the game that's coming soon. Now, you can pick up Horrified at your friendly local game store or online. It retails for about $49.99. I would highly recommend it for your holiday this season. In space, no one can hear you scream. Imagine you are a soldier firing blindly down a corridor as an alien invasion encroaches, or you're a scientist rushing around a makeshift lab trying to find a solution, or you're the traitor escaping with the last escape pod at the final minute, dooming the rest of your party. These are some of the adventures you will experience in the 1 to 5 player game of Nemesis by Awaken Realms. It is a awesome, thrilling, tense, cooperative, actually asymmetrical game where you will be working with a team, hopefully, to escape a infested spaceship a la the Alien franchise. And if you are a fan of that franchise, you will absolutely love this game. You will be going up against traitors, you'll be fighting aliens, you will be trying to achieve some objectives that you'll be giving at the beginning of the game, all in an attempt to get off and save yourself from the aliens that are attacking. And it is tense. If you want something that is genuinely frightening, that has some incredible tense moments and will leave you with amazing stories to tell afterwards, this is the game for you. Nemesis is a little bit expensive, but it comes with a huge number of components that are incredibly well made. The game itself is replayable. You can get new stories every single time you play it, and there's always something changing in it, which I really, really love. Plus, look these models, they are so cool. So one of the main reasons I absolutely had to include this game on the list was purely because of the models that you can get with it. Not only does the base game, which is what you see out on the table here, come with a variety of uniquely and finely detailed models that I'm really excited to paint, but there are a ton of expansions for this game because it's another Kickstarter game, so it had a lot of Kickstarter exclusive expansions, but they've actually released those recently as retail or will be, and I'm really excited with seeing them all. And the thing that I actually find really interesting and fun about Nemesis in particular is some of the expansions do not actually seem to include rules for actual gameplay. They seem to be purely for the hobbyists, which I actually really appreciate because I am somebody who sometimes just collects board games or just miniatures in general because I find them really interesting and I want to paint them because they present an interesting challenge. And for example, the Space Cats expansion, which is one of the ones that I recently picked up, has no rules in it, but it has a lot of really adorable alien cats that you can paint up and potentially substitute as maybe the aliens in the game, although their base sizes don't quite one-to-one match, and I don't quite know if that matters, but I think that you probably could and just use them there. And honestly, that is so fun to me. It adds a little bit of narrative flavor. It creates an interesting, just design and everything that you're going up against. And also, who wouldn't find an adorable kitty that suddenly turned into an alien and tried to eat your face horrifying? I know I would, and that's why I think I'll probably play with them the next time that I play this game. But I definitely think this is one you should be checking out this Halloween season. If you're wanting a little bit more of a deep dive into Nemesis, I would highly recommend checking out Adam's video over on No Rules Barred, where he goes into a much more detailed explanation of what the game is, the mechanics, and just how great of a game this is. Definitely check it out. This has been my list of 5 spooky games you can play this Halloween season. If there are some games that you have been playing that are scary and intense and horrifying, or potentially just charmingly Halloween, make sure to tell me about it in the comments below because I always love finding out about new spooky games to play because it is genuinely like my favorite genre. So definitely tell me about them. But in the meantime, before I head out, I do want to go ahead and give a shout out to my patrons for allowing us to make content like this and supporting us on Patreon. If you want to join them, you can find a link down in the description below. But in the meantime, I've been Angela, you have been watching Hobby Night, and I will see you guys next week with some more news as well as a brand new painting tutorial. Bye.